Howdy, everyone. Welcome to Unsafe Space. I'm Carter. I'm joined by Keri Smith. Keri, I think you're muted, but I don't know why. Let me unmute you. No, you gotta unmute yourself.
I'm here.
There you go. Today, we're very excited to have a special guest on our show. His name is Eric July. You may know him by the name Eric July. But he does wear a lot of hats. He's a host for Canon Sake on his Young Rippa YouTube channel. He's the vocalist for the anti-statist band BackWordz. I kind of wished anti-statist band became a category in music, but we'll see. And he's the co-founder of Being Libertarian. He's also a gloriously incorrigible anarco-capitalist, which makes me feel right at home. We'll put his Twitter links and his YouTube links and that kind of stuff below. Eric, welcome to Unsafe Space. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me.
Eric, I was just, like I said before we started, I was a little late to get on the stream with you and Carter because I was watching your takedown of Marvel, your rant. I was really enjoying it. And I just want to say especially thank you for spending time with us today after you just did your own live stream. I know that's a lot of energy.
Oh, man, this is my life. So yeah, you get used to it after a while. I just again appreciate you guys reaching out, and I'm glad we can make this happen.
So I've got a quick question for you. Are you does Facebook hate you for some reason? Because I just got a notice that they deleted our Facebook version of this live stream. We're only on YouTube, so I'm going to blame you.
Yeah, I mean they're not the most fond of me. I've actually had to recently move to a format to where just my videos go up. I don't do any like text uploads or anything else because they've banned me, demonetized me, remonetized me, banned me again. So I'm just like not even dealing with it. So yeah, I'm not in the best blessings.
Wow.
Huh, I wonder why that is. I thought they were supposed to listen to black voices.
Oh no, there's an asterisk next to it. When they say listen to black voices, asterisk.
Not his. By the way, does your shirt say Mises Nose?
Yes, it does actually. Yes,
dude, that is awesome.
It does.
I know other people are geeking out on the Marvel stuff behind in the background, but I'm geeking out on your shirt. So
I was wondering, as someone who doesn't have that immediate connection, and I'm not a narco-capitalist, I've been doing this podcast with Carter for over 2 years now, and I'm still trying to figure out what it is. So I'm kind of kidding there. I'm wondering if you could explain to people, because I just saw also on your Twitter feed, there are still young people who are learning from you about libertarianism. And my own journey was, I was in the social justice movement for about 20 years. And I didn't come out of it until about 4 or 5 years ago when I started to, things kind of accelerated. We reached an acceleration point. We just reached another one, I think. But when those things accelerated, I realized, wait a minute, this movement supports violence and censorship, and that's not what liberalism is. So I divorced myself from it. And when I did, a lot of people started telling me, Keri, you must be a libertarian now. And I never really felt comfortable saying I am, because I don't know enough about it. So could you explain to people what is libertarianism and how's it different from anarcho-capitalism?
Great question. Well, so libertarianism, I always start with the basics of private property rights. I know a lot of people start with the non-aggression principle, but I think in order to understand what that is, we have to talk about, the private property right aspect of it. And unfortunately, people look at it only in terms of like what's material or what's tangible instead, like in terms of property, but they don't look at it in oneself. And that is you own yourself and therefore own your body. And that's why nobody has the right to use aggression upon you. That is considered, let's say, a bodily invasion, if you will, if someone, let's say, attacked you. So when I talk about libertarianism, I always word it in the sense of that it's about this sort of kind of absolute private property right in terms of concept. The separation from that and anarcho-capitalism is that libertarianism kind of has a scale right there where you have a lot of them, if not most libertarians, are more minarchists, where they believe that the state should be around, but it should exist for like court systems and police and stuff like that, national security. Whereas to the anarcho-capitalist says, well, we accept that the market is best suited And we want as many actions. Again, the foundation of libertarianism, we want as many actions as we can possibly get to be voluntary. Why would we make an exception for, let's say, the state? If we recognize that the market is best suited to handle a lot of these issues, why not the court systems? Why not law and other stuff? So that's the more, people call it the more extreme end of the libertarian spectrum, which is why I always worded in the sense that not all libertarians are anarcho-capitalists, but all anarcho-capitalists are libertarians.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
I like that. I like that you're not starting with a non-aggression principle, because one thing I have a problem with libertarians a lot of times is they have this idea about the non-aggression principle, but they don't really know how to apply it. And so it ends up with this kind of very diverse, not necessarily in a good way, very diverse set of beliefs where, you know, there's not really anything coherent. And private property, I mean, you're also actually just describing the essence of capitalism, which no one really talks about. But if, you know, my daughter asked me the other day what capitalism was like fundamentally, and, you know, the only answer I really have is private property. It's just private property. That's all it is. It's private property. The end. That's capitalism. But I don't think people really think of libertarianism that way. Can you talk about, like, did you vote for Joe Jorgensen? Were you like a libertarian, like politically active libertarian?
No, I never. I mean, I was a politically active libertarian early on in my journey of being a libertarian, and that's when I was doing my thing. And you know, that was back like when Gary Johnson, like first time him doing his thing, where that was the last time that I was like politically active in a sense, where I would get out there and, you know, be a campaign and do stuff like that. That was back then. I abandoned that after that, because I started to realize that there was a larger problem here, and that if I want to be able to navigate and communicate these ideas, I have to be most effective in my own respects. And I'm not a politician. I don't want to be one. I'll never be one. And my talents are more so better suited, or I'm more useful to this movement, if there is to be one, doing what it is that I do and leading with like culture. And I have this fundamental belief that, you know, it's the lagging indicator, politics. You change the culture, the politics change by default. It's not generally, maybe some examples here and there, but for the most part, it's not the other way around. It's culture changes, the politics change by default. So I would much rather lead with that. So certainly right now, as though every day is someone reaching out to me, hey, would you endorse this candidate, something like that, I still do to this day go speak to, you know, an event, so like host by the local libertarian party or something like that. I'm just not a member in a sense or politically involved like that. I'm always leading with culture, but I don't hate those guys. Like there's definitely those Mises Caucus guys. Those guys show me a lot of love. I have no problem doing events with them if it makes sense. But me personally is not, for me, leading with politics is just not something that you're going to catch me doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree. We talk about that a lot on the show. We talk about, you know, the famous Breitbart quote, which I'm going to mangle, but something about politics being downstream of culture. And, you know, and we also talk about actually philosophy being upstream of culture. So it actually, like, changing culture requires, and the more I think about it, actually, it's probably changes psychology as well. But philosophy and psychology kind of drive culture fundamentally. And the thing that's frustrating about that is those are super long cycles. That's like, it takes like 100 years or like generations to make a change, right?
Yeah, no, these are things that aren't, they don't happen overnight. And this is, I guess that's the hard thing about it when you're trying to move people over towards liberty, or rather you want that to come into fruition in a way like in your lifetime, which is, I think, what most of us want. People need to understand that it's not going to happen overnight, when you consider definitely how indoctrinated a lot of people are. I mean, not just Keri, I came from the left too, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, that was a journey, and it took me a minute. It took me a little bit to get it, but it's going to take some time. So in order to change and move that needle, it's going to take a lot of people being in those trenches like that. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, which I think a lot of people want and they expect. And unfortunately, that's just not a reality. Really, it's never been over the course of human history. Now, it may be accelerated now because of we're connected as we've ever been. we don't have to rely upon newspaper and horses and stuff to get information out. We can just upload videos. So I think that we can use technology to our advantage, but still is going to take some time.
How long did it take you to leave the left? Because that's something people ask me a lot. It was about a 6-month process for me to get over my fear to even say that I was questioning the ideology. And then after that, you know, it's still evolving, figuring out what I think about things. I sort of think of it as an unfinished process. You should constantly be evaluating what you think. But how long would you say it took you to that process of leaving the left?
Yeah, I would say like obviously the process started when I was probably 8. No, it was like more closer to like that was, so that's 2008-ish, 2009-ish, after more so Obama had got elected. And I would say that process, the seed got planted probably that year, that around that 2009, and it probably manifested itself, I would say, about a year after that, when I was like, I went there and I learned about what these concepts were, because it's like what you were putting it. We know what it is, kind of what it is that we are, but a lot of people don't know that there's a word for it. You know what I mean? I think that's what, or it's already been theorized. Like a lot of people don't understand that. And I think that's where what happened with me. It's like, maybe I am this. And then you start learning more about it. It's like, oh no, this makes sense. This is what is right. What I feel is certainly right. So it wasn't that long of a process. I think or for me to get it, it was more, I think the longer process was understanding, okay, how do I then take that and then communicate that with other people? Because I know I'm kind of in this form of like activism. That is what's been the challenge for me. And I figured it out eventually, and I did it within my own space. It was me having to understand that everybody kind of has their role certainly in it, which is why I don't, unless you crap on me, I won't go there with you. All these fellow libertarians, I'll let them do their own thing until to the ones that make it known that they don't, all right, then whatever, gloves off. But I understand that everybody has their way of going about it, and their appeal is different. You know, there are people always ask me like, hey man, you're involved in music, you use that as your vehicle. What advice do you have for other people? Dude, I can't tell you how to navigate the subcultures you're in. I can't. I'm not. Yeah. I'm in it. I can. But if I'm not in it, I don't know. But I do believe that in itself, no matter what it is, can in a way be a vehicle to then change the minds of the people that you're around. This is what, say what you will about the left. That's the long game that they played, and they recognize that. They recognize that to it. Like that's how we get these future generations, once they got control of entertainment, education. Like they were good. They were good for the next. They don't have to have the right ideas. It doesn't matter. You know, they have everything else. So they played the long game, and it's time for, I think, people to start taking a bite out of that and understanding what that means going into like the future or the near future.
That leads me to something I wanted to ask you about, because you're sort of a modern day Renaissance man. I mean, you are a musician. You're the front man of the band BackWordz, which is like hip hop influence, metal. You know, as Carter said, anti-statism band. And then on Twitter, I love your feed is so refreshing because you talk about all kinds of things, and you talk about, well, like today, Marvel comics, and we talk about gun rights, and you have a cute dog that you post pictures of. But you kind of are, you're aware of, and you're not afraid to talk about all these different parts of culture and of politics in the world. One of the things you were saying in your live stream before you came here was you were talking about how there's no creativity in the new Marvel X-Men. Yeah. What do you think is the roadblock for creativity in legacy entertainment or mainstream entertainment right now? And then how do we overcome that roadblock and start creating our own creative vehicles?
Right. Like, well, I think it's, unfortunately, a lot of people feel like they have to lead with their sometimes it's political, sometimes it's social views, and they feel like they have to beat their audience in the head. So they lead with that first. See, I'm glad you brought up the band, for example. If you notice, I started, like, even with the first song that we released, kind of, it was Grindstone. That was the name of it. And it was us kind of figuring out what kind of style we wanted to kind of go with and stuff. It was professional. You saw it sounded real good. We had a music video that looked real good. It was a very professional music video. And that's where we came from, though. It was more of, we got good at what it was that we did. So when I was like confidently rapping, for example, when it's something that I do and I'm not screaming or singing, like, I became really, really good at that. Like, I can spit, right? And then when it came to like the screaming and the singing, like, this is stuff that I've been growing up doing forever. And the musicians in our bands are like incredible. We all came from, before we even formed BackWordz, my band is still going, Fire from the Gods, like, as well as other bands that the other guys were in. We were all from successful projects. We beat on our craft and we led with that. So it was get good first.
Yeah.
Then do it. The other people are like, I have a social preference or a social view. I am leading with that. So a lot of these guys are creatively bankrupt, unfortunately, because they're leading with that. And like the video that we were watching with the Children of Adam stuff, where they're just re-swapping, making Gambit a black female version of Gambit. I don't know who the hell asked for that. That's creatively bankrupt, because they're so worried about the representation, diversity aspect of everything. And it shows itself in this absolutely terrible work. So I do believe, though, that stuff can be combat. You know, we kind of, in that last stream, we're talking about some stuff that I'm launching as well. And some of our colleagues, I know you've been on Friday Night Tights, and some of guys over there that have been involved, like EVS and all those guys that have done their own comic books, sold $1 million worth of comic books. And I do think that now more than ever, that sort of independence is offered to us that we didn't have before. So with like the Indiegogo, it's technology more than anything, how advanced, and distribution is not monopolized anymore. We can do whatever it is that we want, and people are becoming more and more bold to do it. So I do think that, and this is what I challenge people with, because now they see, I think more than ever, definitely with the Gina Carano situation, for example, people are seeing more than ever how deep this crap runs, right? But the positive thing is that I believe that it's within the realm of possibility for that tide to change if people just consider supporting just a little bit. I don't expect to wean people off of Marvel or DC like that. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be a light switch. But let's say if it was in a form of like a percentile of 100%, let's say instead of 100% going towards supporting people that will then get an award and then tell you how much they hate you or you're the worst person in the world. How about you put 51% of that into supporting people that are good at their work, most importantly. So they're putting it out and it's legitimate, not just because they have the right ideology or something, but that are good. And let's say, don't hate you. It's something that we have to kind of get our audience to get used to. And the leftists, again, because they played the long game, they got control of things that we grew up on. And it's hard to wean people off that. It's Marvel Comics, man. It's DC, it's Star Wars, it's stuff like that. It's going to be hard to compete with those, but I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. They definitely have emotional hooks in an entire generation. Where are we in the culture war?
Losing. I'm just going to be honest. I hate to be that guy, but I think you have to be honest with the situation to come up with a plan to win. We're losing. Yep. Liberty is losing. And I think a lot of it has to do with, I talk about this on Blaze TV all the time, News and Why It Matters, that, dude, not we as in like myself, but a lot of folks that are libertarians and even conservatives, unfortunately, try to project their like right-minded thinking onto their adversaries, right? The people that are controlling all this stuff. It's a losing strategy because they're not operating like that. They don't operate like that.
Yes.
And you just can't. It's not a winning strategy. So unfortunately, the culture war we're losing, and I do think it can be corrected, but people have to get out of this mind like, okay, we're at the table here. A lot of us, no matter where it is that we got here, a lot of us by way of some sort of reason, some sort of logic. That's not that side, right? So if we're arguing with them as if they're us, we're not gonna win. And this is why so many, I think, in my honest opinion, why so many like libertarians and conservatives have neglected culture, because they're like, I got the right ideas, that's enough. And it's not. Unfortunately, it's not. So do I think part of it is the active pushing out? Yeah. But a lot of it is as well is the constant neglect for how important that is. That is an aspect that a lot of people have ignored because they feel, well, I'm the smartest person in the room. Using me as a musician, why am I the only one in the metalcore and the hardcore space that's doing something that has these ideas, and I'm unafraid to talk about it? That's the problem, right? It's not that that it's like just that they're pushing us out. I believe there's some merit to that, but also we're not there. We're not there. People don't value that, so they go and throw their money behind people that they hate. I think if people, whether it be from an investment standpoint, were involved in those subcultures, the culture war, we'll start winning it. But right now we're losing it. And a lot of it's by way of playing a rigged game and not understanding what we're up against.
Yeah. Our listeners will have heard me say this before, but I'm just curious about, have you read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind?
Mm-mm.
You, I think, would really appreciate part of this book because he talks about how our minds work. You can picture it like a rider on an elephant, the rider being our rational mind and the elephant being our emotional mind, and how we all like to think we make our decisions with the rider in control, but it's really our elephant. And to some people, when, maybe to varying degrees, this is true. But for people on the left, I think especially, they make decisions emotionally.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I hear. You're echoing what he talks about, which is, if you want to change someone's mind, you have to make the emotional argument. It's good to have, obviously, to have the facts on your side, but you can't lead with those.
Yep.
You actually have to lead with the emotion and story and creativity and all of that.
That's the truth. That's what the left figured out. They understood that. Like, I mean, again, they might not have the right ideas, but they have the vehicle to be able to communicate it, and that's why it works.
Yeah.
I mean, you're making me think like this is the advantage of owning early childhood, which the left does and has for many, many generations, is prior to trying to explain through reason what their arguments are, they win emotionally and psychologically. The kids grow up ready to accept an authority's answer and ready to defer to their classmates about what's right and wrong, and ready to accept ideas based on what feels right and emotional argument. Like, they grow up with a psychology that's primed for bad ideas to just kind of come in and use all these, what we might call logical fallacies, to pull them over and get them to act in certain ways and get them to be the kind of activists. I'm not sure. Without rewinding and going back to childhood, it's actually very difficult to get an adults to switch, to change their mind like that.
Yeah, that's the long game that they played, and it's a very tough thing to combat, because it's like it's like a mill, man. Like, they get to pump out more of these guys because they have, definitely from the educational standpoint, they have control of that. So I know we've talked about this, for example, with the COVID stuff, whether it be with jab or the mask thing. Like, you're breeding people to just accept this as a thing that people must do. And it's a prime example of it, because now a lot of young folk are like, yeah, well, it's what we have to do. It's like, why exactly? We haven't been doing it. Why are we doing it now? And it's a difficult thing to combat. It's a difficult thing to combat. I think it can be combat, but it's a difficult thing to combat. And the minute that people understand more so how to navigate, I think they come up with those creative ways to be able to break that. I call it like a communicative ice barrier is more so what it is. Break that to be able then to get that person to listen. My music has probably been, for me, aside from like the comic book stuff, for me, the music's been the number one thing that has gotten me to get people to listen, right? That otherwise would not have. The amount, it's insane. Whether it be people reaching out to me in the inbox, coming to us after the show, saying, hey, we never heard these ideas until we saw y'all perform or until we heard this song, until I loved this music. And then I wanted to look into the vocalist and I saw him talking about that stuff. See, it wasn't that I led with the idea. It was that music was something that they already enjoyed and could relate to, because music in itself has its own kind of aura there. And that's what broke it for them people, those people. I think the same can be said for the other things that I'm involved in, whether it be with the comments. So many of the people that have come to my material by way of, I saw you covering Supergirl or something like that. Now I'm a libertarian because I saw another video. It sounds crazy, but that's the reality of the situation. Like that's that communicative ice barrier that got broken because I did a review on Cyberpunk, or I made a good song that they liked, or I talked about a comic book. Like it sounds trivial, but it's not in the long run. That's the game that the left have been playing, and they have been winning.
Yep. What do you make of the argument that, because you said we're losing the culture war, and I think, I don't want to speak for Keri, but I agree. I think she would maybe almost agree. I don't know. But what do you make of the argument that, well, we need to just accelerate it, because the more ridiculous it gets, the more there's the frog in the pot analogy. What the left has been doing for a century is they ratchet it up a little bit every year, ratchet it up. And people tend to look around them and say, whatever is going on now is normal and fine. And so whatever now is correct. And if they ratchet up now over a period of 100 years and make it more and more leftist or more and more authoritarian or more statist, people just kind of look around. Oh, Matt, like our kids are going to grow up going, well, being told by the government you have to wear masks and shutting down businesses is normal. That's the normal thing, because that happened, and now that's normal. So now, the next level can be, they can ante it up. What do you say to the argument that, like, let's just force them to just go full tilt, crazy authoritarian, scare everyone, and it'll be a massive conflagration, but maybe we'll come out winning in the end. I don't know.
Yeah, I heard people. I mean, you get people what they call a black pill, right? They get people that think that it's done. What is, and we need to have it collapse. The reason why I'm not that, and why I don't necessarily agree with that approach, is because just because it comes down doesn't mean that we get on the other side and it's better. It could be worse.
Right.
It could be worse. Like it absolutely could. And then we've seen examples of this. Look at the USSR. You know what I mean? Like how that was a slow between the regime, but the original Russian Civil War all the way to Stalin. Like it got progressively worse. Though those systems, if you will, had to come down. I'm of the opinion that if like, this is why I don't believe in like this sort of light switch anarchism. I always say this, and that being against the state, for example, or it, like I've gotten in trouble with like a group of libertarians for this, for bringing light of this, where they're like, well, you support this. And in that case, it was like a cryptocurrency at the time. And they're like, you have to support this because it will bring down the state. So you have to be all in on it. And I say, just because this one collapsed doesn't mean that we won't get on the other side with one that may actually be worse than the one that we have right now. This is why I think it's so important to change people's minds, because it does you no good if the system itself collapses, yet the individuals within it still think the way that they think. They're just going to rebuild it. And quite often they're going to be like, well, we should have done it more. If we had more control and we were able to implement more of our ideas, we would have prevented this from happening. You can kind of see that approach right now.
Yeah.
The left with gun rights, they're like always one regulation away from stopping everything, right? Always. It's always one just one more regulation. You saw that with COVID. It's another example of that. We went from 15 days to slow the spread. We're over a year into this bad boy, right? Like we have to change people's minds first, because if we don't, what we unfortunately risk is that if it collapses or it gets to like a complete totalitarianism, it won't be worse, because just when you do think it can get worse, it absolutely, or can't get worse, it can.
Yeah, well, I mean, if current culture got to build society from scratch, it would be worse than where we are now, obviously, right now.
Oh, gosh.
Like, can you imagine Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Twitter get together and rewrite the Constitution?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, we're not that far off. Let me ask you a question, Eric. How do you, being someone who thinks that we're losing the culture we're currently and that things might get worse on the other side of hopefully what will be the collapse of this kind of authoritarianism, how do you maintain positivity and go about your day? And because we have a lot of people, I mean, I'm sure you've encountered this too, a lot of people in our audience sometimes who are like, I'm just so overwhelmed. There's something new in the news every day. And so what kind of advice do you have, or what do you practice in your life that gives you peace?
Man, it's part of why I am involved in so many different things. Because of that. I mean, if I was just, though a lot of people came to know me by way of me talking strictly about politics, if that was all I did, I would go crazy. There's no way that I could me personally, I could do that just all the time. But the beautiful thing that, if anything, though I think the internet has produced a bunch of bull crap as well, it's also allowed us to connect with people that we otherwise we just wouldn't have been able to do. And I value that. I value community, and it's something that I take very, very serious. And people that follow me understand that, because I want people to understand that they're not alone. Definitely if they live in some of these uber like crazy liberal areas, like people that are like in California, New York City or something like that, and they feel like they're, because in large part they are surrounded by crazy people. Right. Yeah. I want them to understand that you're not the crazy one. You're not the crazy one. Some people think that they're the crazy ones because they're like, I think this and I'm thinking I'm right, but all these people around me are saying the complete opposite. I think the importance of community and the importance of connection, and that's what keeps me going, is the fact that what it does is it highlights the fact that there are other folks that think like this, and you're not actually the one that's wrong here. So community to me is important, and my own community, for example, is what really keeps me going. I've been able to build that because of the multitude of different things that I'm involved in, but most importantly, that in itself. And I've seen people get a lot from that, like supporters within the community linking up with each other, and that manifests itself in other ways. And I think that sort of connectivity is important. So I say gravitate towards those like-minded people. It's not an invaluable thing. It's a very valuable thing, and also can keep you absolutely sane among them. And the list is growing. It's growing. Keeping those guys around is I think is a more harder task. But there are people that are being converted to these ideas. And I think it's important to continue to communicate those and just be more creative in terms of how we do it and utilize culture as our vehicle.
Yeah.
Are we headed towards? Go ahead, Keri. Sorry.
Are you familiar with the Ash conformity experiments? I just learned about these. In the 50s, they did these studies, and they've done them a lot since then, where they would bring people into a room and they would draw these different length lines, and they would ask them to pick the longest line. And 5 of the people would be plants who would pick the wrong line. And then the other guy, they'd be watching to see what he did. And they found that like 75% of the time, people would pick the wrong line if the other people in the room did. And so Carter and I, when we first talked about this, I was thinking, so like only 25% of the people always picked the truth, always picked the longest line. That seems kind of low, but now I think that's kind of high.
Yeah, sounds high.
What do you think? Is that reason for optimism? Is 25 something to shoot for?
Well, that's true. That's a good point. That's hard to answer. I mean, but I think if anything, what it does is it just reinforces that idea that a lot of people are doing it just because they go through the motions. Hell, I was a leftist just for the longest. Family leftist, I thought that was the thing to do until I started, of course, thinking a little differently, or rather thinking for myself more than anything. But a lot of people are sheep. I mean, I'm not hard. I don't think I'm being harsh when I say that. A lot of people do stuff just because they see other people do it. Like that's literally what they do. Definitely when it comes to political and social approaches. And I know this because the crazy amount of people that are involved in the industry, a lot of these prints, for example, I'm not going to call them out because I respect that that they want to remain anonymous. A lot of these prints that people see, some of them, I'm not getting them from the stores. I'll get them from like the original artists of the work who will reach out to me and they're like, they work for Marvel or they done work with DC. And they're like, I agree with a lot of what you say. I can't do it. I can't say it because it will cost me my job, or the people around me, they adopt this position. Music, we deal with that. It's always the drummer or something of a band, we go on tour with. Like, man, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. We can't do that. We can't say that, but I agree. A lot of folks are just going through the motions, and they do that because it's political, where more so it's socially expedient. It's socially expedient, which is why they were just, well, everybody else doing it, so I guess I'll do it, because not all people are confrontational. They're only confrontational if they can be confrontational with a group behind them. Most people don't care to meet that. And that's gotten me in a lot of trouble because as confrontational as I am. Hell, we had a debate on my stream today. I ain't got no problem with going into the group of people being like, y'all are all wrong. That's no issue with people, with me. But a lot of people aren't like that. And that's something that I've had to grow to learn, that just not everybody's a confrontational person. And a lot of people are sheep. And it's hard to be optimistic, but I think the more that people see examples of people that are in those spaces that are like, you know what, screw it, they gain some sort of inspiration.
Yeah. Plus,
well, it makes sense biologically, right? Like that you would turn to your social, like if you're in a tribe biologically and everyone else sees a tiger behind the tree and you don't, like you die if you don't just go off of their knowledge and be like, all right, well, I must have something wrong with my eyes because everyone else is saying this thing. I think Rand called it social metaphysicians was the term she used, but yeah. Are we diverging as a culture? Or is there gonna be a reconciliation? Are we gonna solve this? Or is the solution gonna be we separate as cultures?
I think look, I've always believed secession is probably, if it is gonna be a political tool to get us out of these problems, the most peaceful. Let's say that. I think it's gonna be separation, and as opposed to trying to mesh people together that, hey, this doesn't mean that you can't simultaneously say that, look, I'd rather us be cordial and cool, but also you can't force people. You're ensuring conflict, let's say that, and often violent one. If you know people hate each other and you're trying to force them to have to either live amongst each other, share spaces, and what have you. So I'm one of those guys that I'm not a separatist by any means, and I'm certainly not an integrationist. So it's more of one of those approaches. Like, I just want people to be free to make the decision for themselves. So if they want to separate, by all means, do it. If they want to integrate with other people that want to, from a cultural standpoint, would love to have them, by all means, let them do it. I think the state, unfortunately, forces one way or the other, and that's why we hate it so much. And that's why often that ends up in violent conflict. So it's hard to say. If I think we are kind of pulling away. I don't in itself, and maybe this is where a lot of people will disagree, see that as necessarily an objectively bad thing. I think of it more like that's something. It's a thing. It got there involuntarily or violent. If it gets there voluntarily, more so. Look, it is what it is. I would much rather those guys be able to peacefully separate than have to be forced. If I had to choose between the two, to try to force them to kissing each other. And you guys that have kids understand that ain't. Hey, you and your brother got in a fight. Y'all need to hug each other right now. Yeah, that's gonna work right there. No, it's not. That's not necessarily how it works. So I believe that let people voluntarily come up to whatever conclusion it is that they want to come to.
We had a question for you. We had a super chat with a question. This is Curtis. He says, hello from the free state of Montana. Eric, I want to know your stance on the vaccine. Will you take it? I refuse to take it. My doctors also won't take it.
I've said that the only way that I consider taking a vaccine is if that particular vaccine is if we learn that it unlocked an X gene. And people started shooting laser beams out of their eyes. They got super strength. They started flying or something like that. And the thing that we that we could say happened between all of them, that they got the jab. Okay, then I step back and I'm like, we consider this thing, but that's the only way that I do it.
That's not the answer I was expecting.
Yeah, that's
a great answer.
That's the only way that I do it. It's a hell no for me. And the reason why it's a hell no, because it's experimental, man.
Yeah.
Just to sit up here and think that I'm about to be injecting something into me that they just found out about and they already claimed they got the solution for. Come on, man. Like it wasn't a chance in it. And my doctors are the same way. The doctors that I have are like, dude, you're healthy. Come on, with your age group, your health status, you're talking over 99% survival rate. This, depending on which one of the vaccines, is like a 95 efficiency rate. What does that mean? Like, why on earth would I take this? No, it's gonna have to be a no. Unless, like I said, maybe we get a couple of cyclopses going around, and then at that point we consider it. Like I'll actually put it on the table, be like, all right, guys, what's the percentage? Is it like 50-50? All right, well, I risk it, but that don't look like that's gonna be the case. So it's gonna have to be a no for me.
In your Marvel rant before the show, you were making fun of the fact that you showed a video of one of the Marvel executives or someone creative people saying that here's some of the new updates with the characters, and one of them has a TikTok, and one of them is an Instagram influencer. Maybe you could call them and pitch the idea that one of them becomes a part of the X-Men because of the COVID vaccine.
Because maybe that'll be more creative than the bull crap that they're putting out there. That'll be way more creative. Like, no lie. Like, hey, it's unlocking X genes, man. And that's everybody that got the jab because of whatever. That's way more creative than whatever bull crap that they're doing right now. Because holy crap, it's like self-inserts and like weird kind of tokenizations and like they're just creatively bankrupt over there. And then you just see these people on video just lying through their teeth, like, hey, look at us. This is these new characters, and it's like a black female version of Gambit, and I'm like that's the best y'all could come up with. Yeah, they're creatively bankrupt over there in Marvel, man.
Did you see the politician? Both of you. I don't think we've talked about this, Carter. I forget who it was, but I saw a video of a woman, and she was giving a speech, and it sounded the way that her oration sounded a bit like a preacher, and she was saying, "I got the vaccine."
Oh, I seen that.
You saw it. I didn't look up all the ingredients in the vaccine. I didn't ask what was in the vaccine.
I have no personal responsibility. I make decisions based on what the authorities say. You should also do that.
Yeah. She thought this was a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I blew my mind. Like,
yeah. That's how deep in this indoctrination that we are. You think you're telling people that it's supposed to convince them. It's like, yeah, I did it. I didn't even think about it. Like, they just told me to do it. I did it. What's the big deal? Like, dude, you telling me, you explaining it like that is like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Like, it just makes it come into fruition. Like, it brings the picture together here when you say
it's a zombie.
Like it's silly, man.
It's zombie brag. I'm gonna call it a zombie brag.
Yeah.
I have no brains. So wait, what would your superpower be, Eric?
That's a good question. I always think that's going to be super speed. I'm a track and field athlete. I did it all the way through the collegiate level. So I think at some point, my athletic ability, that's probably what it's going to be. But I'll be the guy that get super speed. And I would welcome that. That's why I talk about, we talk about culture. It's funny. That was my relatability. And that was the character that I loved growing up was the Flash. Because of that. Like, I was like, hey, I'm an athlete. I'm fast. Oh, mother introduces me to this comic book. And there's this character that just literally is powered to run fast, and that was my way of being a Flash fan when I was younger.
How would you use your super speed to help fight for liberty?
Oh man, that is an incredible question. That is such a good question. I like to think that I'd want to try to rid use it to rid the world of like the great human atrocities if I could. But I mean, I read enough comic books to know it doesn't seem to go down that way. It's not as easy. Like you try to end the war and create 3 more wars in addition to it. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I like to think that I'd use it for good, not just, okay, I want to go to the grocery store real quick because I'm going to run there real fast, come back, and that's all.
Valid.
Yeah, I mean, that's, what I wanted to do. I mean, I guess, hey, whatever. But I like to think for sure, just because liberty is ultimately what I want to do, then I do it. Maybe I use it to like destroy the Federal Reserve or something.
That's a great one. I like that. What if you could also just round up all of the teachers and replace them really quickly? You could replace their curriculums really quickly. No one would notice.
Oh, maybe. Ooh, that's a good one. Definitely. Yeah. See that's forward thinking right there. That's planting seeds right there. See, that's the type of stuff that's why I would need a team of people with big brains to help me out. On justice.
I can imagine the high school teacher, like they've got their slides up and you come in and like they're starting to say taxation is theft. How did that get taxation is theft? What? Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
There you go.
This is not a question, but I just wanted to read it because I thought this is really nice. And we know this guy. This is Epistivus. He gives a super chat and he says, "I'm a metalhead here. I love your music and videos, Eric. Keep it up. I hope to see you live one day. You helped nudge me closer to libertarianism and away from socialism, hooking me in with your comic reviews." That's to your point.
That just again reinforces. I love hearing stories like that, and it's not even about my ego. It's about it's showing that it works, man. Like that's something that works and that matters to a lot of people. I mean, I know a lot of folks that are right-minded thinking. They don't value that. They don't understand that. It's like, okay, I can just convince everybody because I'm the smartest person in the world. And it's not that simple. If it was, we wouldn't be in this damn situation. So I love hearing stories like that. And it's one that I hear often. And I love it. I absolutely love it that I was somehow able to impact someone's life in a positive way. But also to be able to do it. That's what I pride myself in, to be able to do it in the way that I do it with the music and the other things that I'm involved in. People think that it's trivial, but I just don't think it is. I think this is how you win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Flash, I just have one follow up on that one. Is in your previous video, you were arguing with someone who believes in social justice ideology, and he seemed to be having trouble understanding your point about cultures that emphasize racial differences as being important will then therefore show studies where people say racial differences are important.
Yeah, he didn't understand.
I hope there was a grant for that study. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, like he didn't seem to understand, because I told him a lot of this is a learned trait. Because it is cultural, and he couldn't seem to understand that there are, for one, cultures that exist right now that don't like get involved in this, like their racial disputes aren't in the way that we have them. They are there in some cases, in a lot of countries, they're non-existent. That don't mean that that races aren't there. It's just not like to the degree of it being hyper emphasized as it is here. And he just couldn't understand it. He couldn't understand that. Well, it's a learned trait. And I was trying to exercise like that in itself. The fact that if you go like in spots and pockets of South America, like for example, they don't hit up there and have these stupid arguments because that's not what their culture, that's not what they grew up to believe, or that's not what their culture is, not a reflection of that. And he just didn't seem to understand that. And what I was trying to just let them in on how much of this is a learned trait. I always talk about that, like if you talk about kids on a playground when they're young, they'll play with anybody. They don't care. They don't care to do whatever, play whatever, anybody. It isn't until they get older and they start getting taught this bull crap where, oh, I have to migrate to, or this type of person, this person's the same gender as me, this person's the same race as me, therefore I have to relate to them in this way, and that has to define me. That stuff is taught, man. That's not anything that they just come out the womb thinking. And that's what I was trying to express to them. Definitely when it even with the racial issues, if we want to stump them out, I think the most criminal thing that people unfortunately do with these youngsters is they limit them to like their identity, stuff they couldn't even control, right? Like, you are a woman, therefore you're supposed to be this, and you can only relate to someone else if they're that. You're black, well, you got to see someone black do it, therefore you can't relate to someone else. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, like just because another person the same color as me doesn't mean that I relate to him automatically or something like that. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Right. I couldn't control this. I came out of the womb like this. So this is not anything for me to be bragging about or anything. It's just how I am. And that's what I don't like, unfortunately, that they put that in or instill that sort of value in so many youngsters, in which they like, oh, well, I guess I have to see Black Superman to think that I can accomplish things. It's like, dude, you were taught that. That's not right. That's not a real thing, man.
They do that with girls a lot, right? They say, oh, they need an example of, you're never going to think that you could be a scientist if we don't show you a female scientist. Yes. And it's like, well, I don't think that's true. Which is
really weird because it has the opposite effect. I've said this before to Carter, Eric, but, thankfully, when I was in elementary school, I didn't grow up with all this messaging about, the future is female and women can do science too. And, come on, girls, like, let's do STEM. There was nothing targeted to me for being a girl about science and math. And thank God. And I went to a science and math I got into a science and math high school. And I kind of wonder if it had been different, if I had been assaulted with all this messaging about girls can do science too. I would have been like, God, do we suck at science? Like, yeah. Do we?
No, you would have. You would have. Yeah. Because, and that's what. And then it's like that person then has, whether it be subconsciously, consciously, whatever you want to call it, they can't find value or relatability to another person unless they fit that particular bill, which to me is insulting. Like, because that again, you're limiting every individual to something that they couldn't control, which is it's silly. So that's a taught thing. That's a learned behavior, man. Like that's not anything that they just come out like, oh, I have to see this Black person do this for me to feel like I can do it. Like that's a taught, it's a learned trait, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a question. You were talking, I forget what video it was, but you had a video about in which you told people that when it was kind of along the lines of what you said at the beginning of this show, where the left doesn't necessarily have the same standards, or they don't have the same standards, and trying to argue with them or whatever using the same standards doesn't work, and you're not going to be successful. And maybe it will work to show other people who are watching who have your standards. That's
about it.
But it made me think, and I wonder if you could comment on this. One thing that I've noticed is that not just I've noticed, they use, not only do they not have the same standards, they actually use your standards against you.
Absolutely.
And actually, any good standard you have is used against you. And I wonder if you can talk about how to overcome that or how to notice it.
And just to echo that sentiment, that's 100% correct. This is one of my leading talking points when discussing this topic. And what I mean by that, and an example of this, I say, looking like the conservative v progressive, like in the political space, progressives benefit the absolute most from conservatives trying to lead with they think they can lead with their right mind, and that they want to, whatever exists right now, let's say in a more statist paradigm, it needs to exist. All they're doing is ensuring the power structure of the people that will get it in whatever way that they have to get it. They got a lie cheat still, they'll do it. And you saying, hey, here's the power structure that you can use to rule over us, they'll use it. That's exactly, because they're there to win. Leftists are there to win, man. It's like they're not there to sit up here and play by their books. The analogy I always use is like it's like you're entering in a boxing ring, right? And you're going to fight this other person. You go in there, everything by the books. Gloves checked, wrapped, your hands are wrapped, everything's good. Your enemy has weighted his gloves. He done bought off the refs. He done bought off the judges too. And he's done made it abundantly clear he will kick you square in the sack if he has to. Whatever he has to do, he will do it. That's your enemy. That's your adversary right there. And they use your honesty, and definitely the people that lead with ideas so much, they use that against you. This is why a lot of folks that are on those lines of thinking, they say Eric's he's a little rough around the edges. I know that. I have to be this way. I wouldn't be winning if I wasn't this way. I use this example, and it may be in the. I may have mentioned this in the video that you might be talking about. I can't remember, but there was this one chick who they can't pull the race card on me, obviously. So they go like usually with the homophobia.
Well, wait, don't you just have internalized whiteness? And
when they want to get real creative, they'll go there. Remember, they say straight black men are the white people of black people. That's what they say. So, but no, like she didn't want to pull. She couldn't pull that card. I can't even remember the topic I did that I mentioned in that video that we were talking about. But she went on, said something about just pulled it directly out of her behind, saying, "Oh, you're transphobe." I didn't even address it. I kept I was probably mocking and shaming her at that point. The conversation had been long derailed. I didn't even care at that point, but I didn't even address that point. And she sends like 3 more comments at that, and I don't even address it till she finally is like, "What? You're not gonna address these supposed or this comments of supposed transphobia?" I said, "Nope, under no requirement to sit here and defend myself from a position that I don't have." They malfunction when you do that. They have no.
Wow.
Why?
Wow.
Why? Because they operate on they need you on the defense, and quite often that's what you are. It's like, "Oh, I'm not racist. I'm not a transphobe. I don't hate women. I don't." That's what they depend on you, because at that point it's like a pigeon crapping on a chess table, man. They don't. It's derailed. They know that. And that's how they win. I refuse to go there. The only people, like you were mentioning, and that I mentioned, Carter, in that video, and that it's really the people that are watching that already, even if they got led astray, that you may be able to convince with that just straight line logic. But those other guys, no, they want they try to use your honesty, your ideas, your leading with facts, logic, reason. They try to use that against you. They understand, because they understand with themselves they don't have any desire to do that. Come on, we're talking about a side that the first card for the most part they're pulling is calling somebody a damn Nazi of all things. That in itself tells you these people have no desire to address you with honesty when you are trying to conflate people with something as egregious as that. But they absolutely depend on you being on the defense from that. This is why I don't even go there with them. I'm like, nope, not even gonna talk.
They're like, so you're saying they're like Cobra Kai.
There you go. There you
no
go.
Mercy.
No, exactly. That's exactly what they are. They're there to win, man. They're there to win. They're not there to fight fair. They're not prize fighters, man. They're not there to fight fair. They will low blow you when the ref's not looking. Hell, the ref looks anyway. The ref will be looking. He'll low blow them, and the ref won't even dock the point. They don't care because they done bought them off anyway. So that's the side that you're dealing with. And again, your honesty, when you try to lead with straight reason and logic, you're only handicapping yourself.
Well, and you legitimize, if they're going to lead with "you're a Nazi" or something like that, you're legitimizing that as even a valid criticism by responding to it. It's like, it's so invalid that it doesn't need a response. But I think, the interesting thing for me to realize is, like, if you are an actual Nazi, you're not offended by that.
No.
It only works if you're not actually a Nazi.
Exactly. You wouldn't be. It's like, whatever, if that were actually the case. But they know that you're not. They just know that that's something that history has, rightfully so, decided that is an objectively bad thing, and nobody wants to be that. So they just want to. And it also, and I think this is speaking to a more important part, is that they use that to their advantage, because to them it feels like they justify any bad behavior. So anything that they do to you, anything they do to you, it's like, well, he was a Nazi, or she was a Nazi, or she was a homophobe, or she, sexist, or something like that. So whatever it is that they do that will in turn for them be bad, and it is objectively bad behavior, they're like, well, I'm just doing it because that person is a Yahtzee or whatever.
Yeah, they're dehumanizing you.
True. Yep. And it's funny because that'll be the side that says you dehumanize other people, when that's exactly what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
They're very good at projecting. Are you seeing a difference in generations? I mean, I don't know if the comic book industry, I don't know if you get a good cross section of generations, but are you seeing different generational attitudes towards the social justice left between like Gen X / millennials and, you know, Gen Z or teenagers now?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely with those younger guys. The pendulum hasn't quite swung back as far as what I'm seeing. I think that it goes back to kind of what we were talking about with the COVID thing, and I think a lot of these younger cats are just accepting that as that is what it is, right? Like it is, as in that's how the world is supposed to be. Whereas to the other guys are trying to speak it into existence. The older guys that are my age, definitely my age and younger, because I'm only 30, and these guys, that's really my general. The AOC, like that's my generation. That's the representative of my generation. Her right there, as much of a lunatic I might think that she is. There it is. That's it coming into fruition. So it obviously those younger folks are at that stage in their life where they're probably going to change at some point. So I think that's where a lot of folks look to the optimism. Definitely the ones that decide to just be rebellious just for the sake, like a lot of young people do. Just, hey, you or this, I want to be the opposite, right? And hopefully, you know, some of that stuff happens. But I see more of, definitely in the comic books, is it seems it's getting progressively worse because those guys are now getting power, right? Those guys are now becoming writers. They're getting in control of the characters that have been existing forever, but now they're telling their ideas again because the lens that they see the world is the lens that they had been told it is, when it's not reality by any means, but that's the lens from which they see it. So a lot of these young folks, pendulum hasn't quite swung back yet. It's more of they just see it's the way that they see this, and we're sitting there arguing about all this social justice. For them, it's not even up for debate. It just is.
Well, that's scary.
It is. It should be. It absolutely should be.
How much longer can some of these how much longer can DC or Marvel or Disney live on the borrowed time of these franchises that they own?
It's and that, you put it in perfect terms, because that's exactly what it is. They benefit from having control of things that have existed for, it had been part of people's even childhood. You know, a lot of us and a lot of these characters, like, they've been existing longer than that. You know, Batman, the Supermans of the world, they owe them a mother. And it's like, how long can that happen? And this is what gives me a little more optimism, because people, at least from what I'm seeing in the creative space, maybe not necessarily from the supportive, the consumer base, but certainly in the creative space, are starting to realize how much they have access to, right? And how even like cheap it is these days. I had Nick Searcy on my channel not too long ago, and we were talking about, he was a part of FX's Justified, that show that was a thing for a while. And he was talking about how, man, with like cameras, like hell, even the camera that I'm using right now, like this stuff looks better than predates like a lot of stuff that we've seen over the last decade, because they've made it portable, right? They're more affordable. They're more widespread. Same can be said for a lot of other distribution things where they had monopoly on it at first. It had to go through them. Now, this is why a lot of these, like the Alex Stamos of the world and the Brian Steltzes of the world, they hate YouTubers, because like those bigger ones have more of a following, than they're watching more of their stuff than, let's say, CNN in the morning. They hate that, because at some point they're going to lose control of that, or at minimum, they're going to have to pivot, because right now they are on borrowed time. It's just the fact that they have control of stuff that existed for a very long time before it was crap, namely with Marvel and DC. So as people start to get privy and start to be able to navigate, and they're like, well, I can just come up with my own book. Hell, I don't have to go through Diamond or whatever. I can go sell it this way. This distributor right here is more independent. I can go put out a movie on, YouTube or something like that. And people are starting to realize that. I think the trick is trying to get the consumer to accept that as a legitimate thing. But I'm more optimistic, because a lot of people are from the creator standpoint are starting to realize how much power they actually have. So how much longer can this last? I don't know, but I will tell you this. Let's assume in the case of Marvel DC, let's say, for example, I'm launching my own, comic line here soon. I'd ink a deal with a publication or something like that from a like, they want a production studio. They want to do an animated series on it. That animated series is a hit. That's when they start sweating. And it's go one of two ways. The advantage they have is, again, the first in, the best dressed. So the advantage they have is they can pivot, right? But if they don't, they're just going to get ran into the ground. They'll become more obsolete. That doesn't sound like a realistic thing, but I didn't think MySpace wasn't going to be a thing either at one point. So who's to say that?
Well,
or Blockbuster Video.
Yeah, there's another one.
If you look at some of it's a very small number of Fortune 500 companies from 50 years ago that are still in existence today. Like, that's just how it goes. We tend to think of these large behemoths as never running out of cash and never going away, but you do run out of cash eventually, and if you mismanage things enough, eventually you don't pivot. Especially if SJWs are in charge.
Oh, and they go down.
Their goal isn't even money to start with. So.
Yeah, that's true. They don't even care about making money, man. They'll run that bad boy into the ground, and like, I ain't gonna get out their way at this point. I just want to hopefully create an alternative, like, seriously, that can compete, with these guys. And I think it's just a lot more realistic than what it was. Music is a prime example. Music right now, the industry is still trying to adjust to streaming. They haven't figured it out. They don't even know what is a platinum record. What is that? Like, they don't even know. They're still trying to decide what this stuff is, and it's ever changing. And that was a prime example of where you got guys that were completely independent that are winning awards, or rather selling a lot of records. BackWordz, we was set with a self-release. We ended up with our number one alternative new artist, had a number 2 heat singer album on Billboard. That was unheard of back in the gap. Like, wow. You don't have to do that anymore. And I think the more people as creators realize that we just simply don't got to go through them. Again, they got one or two options: pivot, or they get ran into the ground, and we'll see what happens.
I think you're right. With it. I used to work in the comedy world, in television and, concert comedy films, and they all the buyers, they just buy whatever they think is currently culturally popular. And if a show is a hit, they try and repeat that. So when Anthony Bourdain was a hit, they're all looking for shows like Anthony Bourdain. And now it's just a bunch of those people, those gatekeepers who make these decisions at these big studios and companies. They see social justice as culturally big. It's the thing. So they're trying to sell shows like that. But if we change the culture, or if someone comes from out of nowhere and does something that takes off online, or and then like you said, maybe goes to animated series, or gets gets a deal from one of these places, they'll all be looking for that too. I really believe that. Absolutely. Because they're not sincere social justice warriors.
No. This is lucrative right now. For them, they think that this is what people want. Now, fortunately, the benefit that, like, the DCs or the Marvel of the world, they got like other properties that can be profitable that they can pull. Like, so there's no way these damn comic books are making any money right now. But they have control of, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so they can probably reroute the funds, right? That's the best. That's the benefit. So they look at it from the standpoint, in that, this is why I say the insane people control the asylum right now, because it's like it's lucrative right now. They think that it's lucrative. Yeah. A lot of people, you look on the internet, probably listening to people on Instagram, Twitter, or whatever, doing whatever it is that they want to do. They're like, okay, that's what the people want. Now, again, is that something that is going to be sustainable? I just don't see it happening, man. I don't.
Where do you think? Where would you point people to some good art, comics or music or whatever that's not in these guys' wheelhouse? That's not comics that aren't Marvel or DC or
There's a lot of people that are in the independent circuit. I think the most notable, because it was a whole movement behind it, was that Comicsgate community with Ethan Van Sciver, who used to write with. He did a lot of DC work. He also did some Marvel stuff with, like, X-Men, and he comes out with, like, Cyberfrog comic as an independent person. And it's a literal $1 million, like million is like the biggest crowdfunded comic book, like on Indiegogo, right?
Yeah.
Literally million. Literally, he's made more money off of that than I'm sure he ever made doing like working for Marvel or DC, right? And that in itself has its own community. There's a lot of independent guys that are doing their thing. I think that's just the most notable because you saw someone cross out of that space like Ethan did into, and it was like a cancellation basically. People saw that he was a Trump supporter, you know what I mean? Like people saw that, and then he comes out of that, says, all right, we're gonna do our own thing, and fans caught him. You know what I mean? They absolutely caught him. So that community in itself is doing their thing. Music wise, it's harder to identify because a lot of these people are in the closet. You know what I mean? But there is guys like myself. Phil Abante is a good friend of mine. Him and I are in the same scene. He's the lead singer of All That Remains. And though they're not the like beating the audience over the head with the message, he is an outspoken and proud libertarian. So he doesn't hate you. He doesn't hate you at all. So guys like that, my buddy in Fit for a King, Ryan Kirby is another guy in the metalcore scene. If you're into that, he's not as outspoken as I am. Then again, fucking not that many people that are. But he's a fellow libertarian, so they exist. But everybody else, they're in the closet. They're like in the closet. They're like, okay, I agree, but man, I can't say that. To that I say this doesn't stop. This is why I respected Gina Carano so much. I mean, Gina was like, she didn't bend a knee. She's got way more balls than a lot of these other creators. She just said, "You're gonna cancel me, and it sucks, but." She never bent the knee. She still to this day she doesn't, and I love it. I love it.
Yep.
We have
what about anime? Is anime woke? Sorry.
Well, we have a chat. I just want to say it says, "Hey Eric, I'm looking forward to your Zack Snyder Justice League breakdown."
Yeah, that's I've been talking that up. It's a 2-hour long like I do the comic book history of Justice League, and then we talk about that. That may go out tonight. After this, I'll be working on it, and
oh my goodness,
yeah, it's literally 2 hours. It is literally it's 2 hours, maybe a little more than 2 hours, but for sure, got some things that it looks very good. I think everybody's gonna enjoy it. I can't wait to get that stuff out. So yeah, I'll be on the lookout for that. That may come out tonight.
Cool.
Well, I'm gonna go back to the other question, which I saw someone in chat ask: is anime woke?
No, and that's I think someone wanted to me like that's another avenue that people can go to. That's probably where that guy is alluding to, where that genre has not been infested by maybe out here, but not overall has not been infested with social justice bullcrap. And this is anime and manga is an example of why I can't allow these idiot Marvel DC writers any slacks. I can't. Because it's like I don't know, you always hear about a new anime, a new like, let's say a manga, but definitely more so from the anime that is just fresh. It's like brand new. It's not a rendition of what already happened. Yeah, you got some long-standing stuff like Dragon Ball that continues to go to these days, but most of them aren't. It's like something that's brand new. Yet people, for whatever reason, act like everything's been done. And then I go see an anime that's like the best thing ever. And I'm like, no, it hasn't. No, they're just way more creative than everybody else because they're not leading with this bull crap. But that's what happened. It's almost like if you don't lead with trying to be an advocate of social justice, you could come up with something that's creative. It's almost like that's the point that we've been making. But anime and manga, for sure, it points that out for sure.
Well, you got to imagine someone who's actually creative doesn't want to work for Marvel or DC because they get stifled all the time.
That's true. That's probably
you don't have the freedom to even suggest stuff. Like if you say the wrong thing in a meeting, how about we do blah, blah, blah? Like you get fired.
Yeah, you're fired. That's true. That's a good point. That's a great point. That's a great point.
Huh. Are you concerned? So, as a libertarian /ANCAP, are you concerned that even if we win against the social justice arm of the left, that we've kind of slid so far into socialist mentality generally that really we're postponing the inevitable?
No, like I said, I'm way more optimistic than that. I do think that they're the biggest threat for right now. I'm not oblivious to that. I think there are libertarians that are. And that's again goes back to the cultural ineptitude that I'd say these guys have, or ineptness, rather, where they just have no idea what the hell is going on. I would consider them the biggest threat. But if anything, I think if we become victorious in that element, it should get people like amped up, like, okay, liberty can win. But I don't think we're prolonging the inevitable by any means by trying to fight this garbage off. But this is why it's so important to be unapologetic and passionate about what it is that we believe in, because that's generally what it's almost like galvanizing the troops. You know what I mean? It's like you're getting a morale boost, if you will. So I'm just way more optimistic than that. I don't believe that there's anything that's inevitable. It's a market at the end of the day. There's no way that I can predict exactly what's going to happen. And I've seen crazier things. I've seen a lot of crazy things over the course of I'm not that old, but crazy things happen, man. And things that you don't think would happen ends up happening, and because you couldn't predict it. And then there's something new that gets introduced that changes things, like Bitcoin or something like that, in terms of what it introduces. Something it's wasn't thought of necessarily, or rather didn't come into fruition like it did before. So I'm just way more optimistic. I know some people think of it as prolonging the inevitable. I just don't simply believe in that. Hell, even with the social, it wasn't this bad. Hell, I'd argue that late 90s, early 2000s, we probably was over this hump of like racial bullcrap. Like, I'm not saying there weren't people that were into that, but we were probably over the hump by then, because we didn't obsess over like racism and stuff like we do to this day. You know, so things can change for sure.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think it is about you that helps you to see through the noise and see through the machine and the propaganda and stuff? I'm always curious about what some people we've talked to, they say, it might be that I have a grandma who lived through communism, or it might, and I heard stories from her, or it might be this other thing about me. What do you think it is about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's experience more than anything. I grew up, man, a knucklehead, for lack of better terms. I used to gang bang and do all stuff like that so many definitely young black brothers get involved in. And fortunately for me, I made it out on the other side, having not been dead or in jail for a long time. And my thing is, my experience in itself just allows me to, and I've learned from that, most importantly, a lot of people go through grimy stuff and they don't learn nothing from it. Whereas I went and experienced all that bull crap, and I was able to come out of that like, okay, it ain't just about not doing that. It's about, okay, trying to understand why it was that I did it. You know what I mean? What led me down this path? Yeah. And that's why I'm like this communication. That's the thing that I lead with, and with everything. And I know I've reiterated this on this show, and that experience just has allowed me to communicate with so many different audiences, no matter where it is that I'm at. There's so many different avenues you've mentioned, whether it be with the comic books, whether it be with I don't package the message the same exact way for each audience. I think it would be stupid for me to do that. My experience has allowed me to understand that in itself is a thing. And I also I'm not like egotistical to the sense to where like I feel as if my ignorance on something is offensive. So right. I know when I don't know, and I have no problem with not knowing. I just won't speak aggressively on something or approach it like, that's what I always say, ignorance crosses into stupidity. You know what I mean? When you know you're ignorant on something, yet you have like a loudmouth opinion on it, or something of that nature. So me being just having that experience that a lot of people fortunately didn't have, but fortunately for me, I guess I had it because I at least got to learn from it. It allows me to see through a lot of this bull crap, but most importantly, it also allows me to be effective in my communication, and whether it be trying to teach people about these concepts of liberty or just trying to get them off of what within, like, say, for the sake of conversation, is social justice bullcrap, trying to get them to understand that for what it is, not what they want it to be, I guess, more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's humility. You're talking also about humility,
No.
not being that. I have never heard it phrased that way before. That's a great way of putting it, though. Not being so arrogant that you're offended by your own ignorance.
Yeah. Which is what most people are. That's why they project. That's why they are so aggressive to people that may not think in the same way they do, because they can't fathom a world in which they got it wrong or they don't know. And that is something that I'm on the opposite end on that. Like I'm always learning something, but I admit when I don't know, people ask me, I know it seems like I'm an encyclopedia up here with this comic book stuff, but there are some things that I don't know. And people ask me, like, how did you feel about this, this, and this? I'm like, not that familiar with it. I have no problem. I could be arrogant like Google normie or something and try to become an expert real quick, but that's not real. That's not genuine, man. And you have to approach it with some sort of humility. You have to do that if you want to learn from it. Like, you can't even seek the proper knowledge if you don't understand that you're ignorant on a particular subject. Doesn't matter what it is. Like, if you think that you know it all, or rather you're so offended by your own ignorance, then what incentive do you have to go seek the knowledge for it?
Yep. Yeah, well said. You said you had kids?
No, I don't. Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
I was confused. I didn't know you had kids, but you
No. Not yet. We'll cross that bridge here soon. Soon enough, but not yet.
What do you think the would you homeschool kids? What would you tell parents of young kids right now?
Get them the hell out of public school. If that's number one. Get them out of that indoctrination. Get them out. Like, that thing is rotten to the core, and there ain't no way in hell when I do go that route. There is no way in hell that I would drop them off there. Homeschool, private, those are the only things that I'm entertaining. Public school is a hell no. It ain't. It's just no way. I wouldn't allow them to suffer that abuse. It's just rotten. Definitely. I think this COVID thing, and I'm pretty sure there's parents in the chat, and this COVID thing had to show people how rotten to the core this thing is. Like, that, how high it is, and these teachers unions, and how much power that they're able to wield. Like, number one, if I'm giving anybody advice going forward, definitely for those of you that value liberty, get them up out of there. Get them if you can. I know sometimes it's an economic situation. I get it, but if you can, get them out. There are options, and if there are options around you, get them the hell up out of there, because that public indoctrination camp is where a lot of these knuckleheads are learning this information.
Yeah,
bad information.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of parents assume that pulling them out of school and trying to homeschool, they'll miss out on some sort of knowledge or experience that's valuable in public school. And I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, there's also so many mediums in which you could have extracurricular activities, right?
Yep. While
being homeschooled or while going to a more private school. I think that definitely with as much connectivity that we have, I think obviously the education system is just it's rotten, and probably always was, but it's certainly outdated. I feel like we have to, for sure, at minimum, concede that. But yeah, with the vast amounts of like just like, if that's something that you're really worried about, you know, there's you can still homeschool people in groups. Hell, you can like that. Yeah. That is a thing in private schools. Those are things. So I don't think that person is maybe missing out on it, because that's probably the one place that people will ever see violence, experience that in those big public schools. Maybe that's what you're missing out on, you know. But other than that, they ain't no. You can get.
Well, you have to be prepped for prison somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Public school is a great prep for prison.
Absolutely.
They tell you when to get up, when you can pee, where to go, what to eat, and you get picked on and beat up.
Absolutely.
So it's all good. That's how you build a community of activists.
Eric, I know you have, somebody in the chat said you have a mixtape coming out. Can you tell us some of the stuff that you have in the works?
Yeah, so I'm dropping down a mixtape for free. You'll see it on streaming services, but for either my website or the band's website, we'll have it out there for free. I don't care if we get paid for it or not. This is something as a thank you. That look, it's fun being in a band that I am, and the only negative that is because we're so all over the place with our style. You get people that want one or the other of it, like want more of it. So if I do, if like Alex does his little R&B song that he has on the album, people like they want a whole tape of that. Or I do just a rap song where it's no metal. They want a whole tape of, or we have more hardcore slanted or more metalcore slant. So the mixtape is for those of you that just want to hear me spit. They just want rap. They just want strictly, it's no metal in it. It's no hardcore music. That's coming down. That's like the next released project that you'll see. We also have definitely as this reopening stuff is happening. Hopefully we can get on the road later. But we have some stuff that the album 2 for the band has always been done, like for the most part. We just couldn't release it because we couldn't tour. That's the only, so we've been sitting on that. That's ready to rock. It's just whenever we can get back on the road, that will be a thing. But for sure the tape, and we may give people like a little taste, like a single or something that won't be on the album because we got so much throwaway stuff that we've done, that we can release. So tape first, then maybe something in between, and then hopefully we can, I guess, as places, make it legal to perform in front of people, we'll be able to go travel outside of Texas. Texas is over 100%. We'll probably do a little Texas run or something. But if we're going,
where in Texas? I'm in Texas.
Yeah, well, probably do everywhere. Probably like from Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, Houston. We probably will do a run, a Texas run first, because that Texas is wide open, and most of the band is based out of Texas. But like a full tour, hopefully we can get that done at some point. But Texas obviously it's got to be first.
I'm going to be at your Texas shows.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Do you go to PorcFest?
I've done PorcFest. Have we done it twice or once? I know there was one year that we for sure did it. I think they're trying to get me there this year. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it happen, but for sure we've done it. The band's done it. The band did it one year. The whole band came out there, and we were like on the way to do. We did a run out of it, like we did other places, but we ended up doing New Hampshire there. So yeah, we've done Porc. I spoke there as well. So always a good time.
I just wanted to ask you about the Free State Project and what your thoughts are on it, because libertarians, it's one of those, I don't know. We're all supposed to love the Free State Project, but few of us live in New Hampshire, so.
Yeah, it's like one of those things that I don't get in their way. I also don't like the climate in New Hampshire, so I can't do it. But if there is something that they can pull off, and at least in that locale, somewhere around there, can bring about a more freer place, they got my support. Even if I'm not going to be the one reaping the benefits from it, I like to see that there are people trying to turn things into like something that's more actionable, like not just about theories and stuff. And they're actually trying to do something. If it succeeds or fails, doesn't matter. I credit them for at least trying to make sure they did. And then there's been a lot of people that moved to that area specifically for that. So hopefully they can, as it progresses, they can make that come into fruition even more.
Yeah. I think a few thousand people at least have been.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because
I can't do it. I can, but it's too cold, man. From Texas, man. Like I can't do the New Hampshire.
Are you from Texas?
Yeah, I'm from Dallas. I'm
right on.
Yeah, so I can't. Nah, man, I can't do that.
How are you going to stop us horrible Californians from ruining your state? We're on our way.
Well, as long as y'all pile up in Austin, I'm fine. like that, and that's, to be fair, that's where they're going. So as long as that's been blue. Like whatever. Like y'all go run that bad boy into the ground if y'all want to. Like, I mean, I got a lot of Austin fans that are like, stop telling them that. I'm just saying that's where they're going.
You know what though? They're bleeding out because I'm up in Williamson County now. I've been in Georgetown for a couple years, and they're bleeding out. We went blue this time.
Yeah. Oh
and
wow.
We have a woke. You know that show Portlandia? We have one of those kind of feminist bookstores. It's worse than that. Yeah, but that's.
Well, I just. I mean, if y'all have to do it, go to Austin. That's all I'll say. That's all I ask. Go to Austin. Go to Austin. Go pile in there and leave everybody else the hell alone.
Yeah. So why don't you tell people, we have the links up where people can find you, but just tell people real quick where they can find you online.
Yes. The YouTube obviously is Young Rippa 59, the number 5, number 9. It says, as well as Odyssey. That's ODYSEE. You can see us there, over there as well. My show is at 1 p.m. throughout the week. And we do have it live called For Canon Sake, as you guys mentioned earlier. And you can go visit forcanonsake.com, but everything, and we're getting a complete overhaul of my website, ericdjuly.com, which you'll be able to get everything there. We're going to be phasing out Patreon soon, and I'm going to be housing all of that stuff on my own website, which I'm very excited about. So ericdjuly.com, you can get links to everything, YouTube, Twitter. It just makes it easy for you.
You know, I meant to ask you what For Canon's Sake means.
For Canon's Sake, I'm glad you asked that. It's canon in the sense of comic books. The show was never supposed to be about strict politics. I know sometimes definitely around the election time it seemed to turn into that, but like today we were talking about comic book stuff. That's what the show was supposed to always be about. It was supposed to be more, we talked about the politics stuff, but it was always the like gaming and comic book stuff. So canon references obviously the concept of, to me, what has been the most important thing and why I got into comics is the idea that these characters have legacy, have histories, and they all mesh together and they're part of this larger shared universe. So that's what the canon in For Canon's Sake, instead of saying like for God's sake, is like for Canon's sake.
That's something makes much more sense to me now that I understand.
You don't mess with canon.
No, you don't. Leave it alone. Leave it
alone,
man. If people trying to ruin it and thinks I need to change it. No, you don't. Like, leave it alone.
Yeah.
Well, but what if it's not woke?
Especially leave it alone. If it's not. Now, canon nowadays for like Marvel and DC, it's like inconvenience. That's what it is for them. They're like, they want to be able to tell stupid, goofy stories or weird versions of characters that we've known and loved, and that's what SJWs do. They exist to infest parasites.
Yeah, well, they're not allowed. You're not allowed to have fun if you're in the SJW world. Fun is outlawed. So
very true.
If they see you enjoying something, there's a problem with it.
Yes, it's very fun is racist and sexist and homophobic and all of that. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Any final messages you have? By the way, we really appreciate you coming on and taking your time. I know, like, you're a machine. The amount of live hours you do in a day is insane. Thank you for spending some of those hours with us. Is there any kind of final messages or anything you want to tell our audience?
No, look, it's everything that we've been talking about. I think it's a very, very important thing. I think a lot of folks out here that see something is wrong, and they are wondering how they can help. Even if you don't have to be a commentator or a public figure or something like that. It's always leading with culture. So if you learn anything else, it's just use what you already are around, and what you are already familiar with in the subcultures that you are familiar with to be able to change people's lives. You'd be surprised how successful you're going to be, and also how more effective you are than people who decide to neglect it.
Yeah. I have before we end, Carter, I just decided to do this, so it's a surprise for me too. Okay. I'm going to do just 3 questions for you, then we'll end. Free association. This podcast I was just on, Disaffected podcast, Josh Slocum, the host, did this, and I thought it was really fun. So just tell me your first thought. Batman or Superman?
Batman.
Correct. Tabasco or Cholula?
Tabasco.
Oh, you're so wrong.
Tabasco.
No, that's a hill I will die on. Glock or Beretta?
Oh, man, I'm a SIG guy. I can't do anything.
That's the correct
I actually think that's the correct answer.
Yeah, that's the correct SIG all day long. SIG Sawyer, man. I'm a SIG guy.
Thank you.
Actually, I will say the correct answer was 1911. and
There you go.
you failed miserably. All right. Hey, thank you, Eric. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. Love talking to you. Love your stuff. Everyone, go check out his YouTube channel and Twitter and everything else. We'll put the links below.
Thanks, Eric.
Appreciate it.
Bye, Carter.
Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, we have a deep content library that includes interviews with everyone from Mike Cernovich to Megan Murphy, so go check it out. If you'd like to see more, please consider supporting the show by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on all the major social media platforms, at least for now, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space chat on Telegram. See you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production has not been authorized by the Cathedral. Pay no attention to it. The following co-conspirators have confessed to crime. For your protection, contact with these individuals is strictly prohibited. Did you know that liberty is just a dog whistle for insert evil ideology? If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Oh no, please do not protest against racism. Anything but that. I beg you. Computer voice Curtis, never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.